Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. So before we get started, can you guys notice anything different about my background? I'll wait. Yes, y'all, I finally set up my bookshelves in my library and I'm so excited and so happy that this space is finally starting to come together. If you've been watching my past videos, I've been saying that I need to really get the ball rolling and get this room transformed into my actual library. It's finally happening. Because of the type of person that I am, I'm always decorating, I'm always redecorating, and I'm always looking for new ways to spruce up my space. So these shelves are subject to change, especially with the fall and holiday season coming up. I definitely want to decorate a little bit in this room. You might see some things taken away. This is always going to be a work in progress, but for now I'm really happy with how this turned out. And I'm just so happy that I finally have my own dedicated room to my books and reading. And filming takes a weight off of my shoulders because my current apartment is just so noisy and so loud, and it's just not equipped honestly for a library or also just for me to film really. So the fact that I'm able to have this space just means more to me than you'll ever know. But with that said, that means that I am going to have to play around a bit with the angles and the lighting and just the overall quality when it comes to my videos. So please bear with me and have some patience because this is definitely going to be a learning curve. But for right now, this is the best lighting situation that I was able to come up with. I feel like it still looks a little bit artificial, but it is what it is. So like I said, just bear with me. I'm hoping that I can get this under control in the next couple of videos, but for now, this is what we're gonna have to deal with. And of course, I do plan on filming a library tour at some point in the near future. Again, I'm still trying to add a few things here and there and really make sure that this looks as good as I can get it for the camera. But that video will be coming your way. I just don't know when. So definitely make sure you subscribe and turn on those post notifications and follow me on Bookstagram so that way you'll be notified whenever I do drop that video. Let's finally jump into the reason why we're here today. My August wrap up. It took me a little minute to put this video together, but at least we're here now. And the good news is that I only have 3 books to share with you in today's video. Similar to my recent reads video, I haven't really read that many books in August, but I'm hoping in September that will change. It should change because I do have some exciting content planned for September in terms of reading vlogs and just long overdue books that I really need to get to. And none of these books are under a 4-star, which is just incredible because that means that I definitely had quality versus quantity in the month of August. I am going to start out with the lowest rated book and then work my way up to the highest rated book of the month. So the first book that I have here that is sitting at a 4-star is You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. And now that I'm looking in the viewfinder, I can see that my ring light is kind of blowing out the cover for this book. So I'm really sorry about that. That might happen with most, if not all of these books in this video. But like I said, I'm gonna try to get it under control in my future videos. So just bear with me. But I'll at least do a close-up so that way you can see what the cover looks like. There you go. I love this cover for one. I just think that the attention to detail with the house and the sky and the colors and everything, it just looks so nice. And then also too, underneath the dust jacket, there is a bloody handprint, and I just thought that was a nice little detail and a nice little touch. Before I really get into my thoughts, I just have to say that this book was a wild ride. Geneva Rose never disappoints me with her twists and turns. Like, she is truly one of my go-to psychological thriller authors, and I'm just so excited to see what she's going to come out with next. So I'm going to try my hardest to give you guys a synopsis in my own words without spoiling anything, of course. This story follows 2 characters named Grace and Calvin. And so starting with Grace, Grace is actually a New Yorker. She is all about the hustle and bustle, all about the grind, and she works as a banker. And because of this, Grace is really looking to go off of the grid for a week and really just disconnect and take some time for self-care essentially. In order for her to really go off of the grid, she decides to go on vacation in a random town in Wyoming, and she decides to book a Airbnb specifically at this farm in Wyoming. That's where the other character as well as her love interest named Calvin comes into play. And so Calvin is a country boy through and through. He is very nice, very hospitable, very charming, and he is just really looking to make some extra cash. And so that's why he rents out his farm slash house as an Airbnb. And so Grace ends up traveling to Wyoming, and that's where her and Calvin finally get to meet and get introduced to one another. Before you know it, they both end up in this whirlwind romance, and they become very attached to each other very quickly. But of course, things are not as they seem because weird and creepy and just off-putting things start happening to Grace and Calvin, but also just around them during Grace's stay. And the story takes off from there. I'm not going to say anything else because I feel like this is one of those books where you truly need to just jump into the story and just be there for the ride, because you're definitely going to be taken on an emotional roller coaster when it comes to this story and these characters especially. And that's mostly what I wanted to talk about, and what really set this book over the edge for me were the characters, specifically Calvin, and I'll get into him a little bit later, but I do just want to talk about Grace and the things that I liked overall before we get into to that. So starting with Grace's character, I liked her enough, but there were some moments throughout the story that made me scratch my head at her because there was just some choices that she made that just didn't personally make sense to me. Like I mentioned, Grace wants to take a vacation, and she's taking a vacation in Wyoming to go off of the grid. So where Calvin's house is situated, it is very isolated. And so because of this, you would think that Grace would have a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is, maybe street smart, I don't really know, but you would think that she would have a little bit more, I guess, just common sense to understand that like she is a single solo woman traveling to this isolated area to stay in this man's house, and she doesn't know him or anything about this area. She barely has cell service, she barely has Wi-Fi, and her car is barely working. So there are a lot of things stacked up against Grace before she even makes it to Calvin's ranch. You can tell that none of that really phases her as much as you think it would. That was something about her character that really threw me off and that I didn't personally understand. I do understand that there are a lot of women who do solo traveling, and I love that for them, and I love that all of my girlies are doing their thing, traveling, experiencing life, but they're obviously doing it while being safe. And I just felt like Grace could have did a little bit more to ensure that she was being safe. So I can definitely see that being a pain point for a lot of readers when it comes to Grace's character, is that she doesn't always make the smartest decisions, but of course it does help move the plot along. Overall, I did like her enough. I love the New York aspect, of course, because one thing about me, I love me some New York, okay? Like I love me some New York. I live in Philly, so New York is truly not that far away from me, and I've spent, you know, a lot of time in New York. So anytime New York is mentioned in the story in any capacity, I'm going to eat it up. I don't care. Now, besides the characters themselves, another thing that I really enjoyed about this story was the way in which both Grace and Calvin would scrutinize not only each other, but whatever situation was playing out in front of them. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but this story is told in dual POVs. And so you're inside both Grace and Calvin's head. And it's just so fascinating to see how both of them approach a situation and how they dissect it and how they react to it. And there were a lot of moments throughout the story where there was, of course, like a situation playing out in front of them in real time, and you were reading from both of their perspectives as that situation was playing out. And the way in which Grace would react to it versus Calvin was just so fascinating to me. And maybe that's like my interest in psychology peeking out a little bit, because I just love trying to understand why people's minds are the way that they are, why certain people operate the way that they operate. And that's what this book was for me. I just felt like I was having a lot of fun, not only keeping up with the story, but also keeping up with both Grace and Calvin and what they were truly thinking about each other and whatever was happening in front of them. This also ties into why I like unreliable narrators as well as dual POVs or multiple POVs, because I just feel like it makes the story more gripping and engaging, and I feel like it also adds a certain layer of substance to it that you wouldn't get otherwise. And I just felt like there was so much that Geneva Rose was able to do with both Grace and Calvin's characters, especially since you're following both of their POVs individually. So I just really liked that part of the story, and it really had the wheels in my head turning, because you never really knew who was lying, who was exaggerating, or who was simply telling the truth. There were certain moments throughout the story where I was gravitating towards one character over the other, but then they would say something or do something that was a bit off-putting or that didn't make sense. So then I would go back to the other character, but then they would do the same thing. I just really love the whole ping pong effect that this story had on me and my psyche. And now moving into the last thing that I really enjoyed about the story was Calvin's character. Let me explain. If you have not read the story and you are interested in reading it, then I definitely recommend skipping to the timestamp that is on the screen somewhere, because I do have to give a spoiler for this, because I feel like I can't explain why I really enjoyed Calvin's character and the way he was set up without giving spoilers. So like I said, just skip to this timestamp on the screen. I thought it was just so wild how deceitful Calvin was, especially when you finish the story and you take a step back and really reflect on what you read. Calvin had to put on a facade slash a mask and act like a good guy for an entire week, so that way Grace wouldn't get suspicious of him or think that he was dangerous. As soon as Grace was ready to leave the ranch, Calvin's mask fell from his face like that. And I thought that was so terrifying, because you know for a fact that this is how some people are in real life. They'll put on a mask, they'll put on a facade, they'll put on a whole act and act as if they are someone that they aren't, especially someone that's nice or charming. The whole time they are the devil incarnate. I was just so shocked, and I genuinely did not see that coming. I definitely thought there was something off about him, but I couldn't have imagined that what we found out about him was what it was. I just thought that revelation in Calvin's character really set the story over the edge and made it more dark-sided than it originally was. I was more taken aback and more impressed with his storyline than I was with Grace's. I still enjoyed learning about Grace and what her true motives were, but Calvin's took the cake for me. I'm sorry, just because of how downright terrifying and chilling his true colors really were. And especially because I am one of those people that does consume true crime content, this is like textbook Ted Bundy or whatever serial killer you could think of. I was just really impressed with how Geneva Rose weaved in all of those themes into the story and just made Calvin's character so chilling, like I said. And moving on to my main critique about this book, even though I enjoyed it and I gave it a 4-star, I obviously didn't give it a 5, so it wasn't 100% perfect for me. And that's because I felt like there are some plot holes within the story, and I definitely left the story with more questions than I did answers. And that was something that was a bit disappointing and a bit jarring, because I just feel like in the books that I have read by Geneva Rose, she has done a great job at really tying up any loose ends and explaining things away. But I just felt like with this book, there were so many different instances where certain characters popped up throughout the story or said certain things throughout the story, and you would have thought that they would have had a bigger impact, or we would have got some resolution to that, and we never did. So that was really my main critique about the story and why I didn't rate it a full 5 stars. But other than that, I had a really great time reading this. I thought this book was absurd, definitely theatrical at a lot of points, so just keep that in mind if you are one of those thriller readers that likes for your thrillers to be serious and have more commentary. Like I said before, I feel like with Geneva Rose's books, you have to suspend a lot of disbelief and understand that a lot of them are going to be a little bit campy, a little bit theatrical, just because like that's just the nature of her storytelling. The next book that I have here is also sitting at a 4-star, and it is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. So again, my light is blowing it out, so I will show you guys the cover just in case you wanted to see what this cover looks like, even though I feel like everyone knows about Every Summer After. But yes, this is the cover, and y'all, this book was so cute. Why did I wait so long to read this? I have no idea. I'm so happy that I'm finally able to cross this off of my TBR, as well as just close out my summer reads with this book. I just thought that this was the perfect book to end August with, truly. This story follows 2 characters named Persephone and Sam, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to call Persephone Percy because that was a nickname given to her in the story. Percy and Sam have actually known each other since they were kids. They've known each other since they were 13, actually. And the reason why they even got introduced to one another is because Percy's family ended up buying a shore house where Sam lives, and I think the shore house is in Barry's Bay. So that is where Sam resides full time, but Percy and her family, I'm pretty sure, live in like downtown Toronto or somewhere else in Canada, child. I don't remember where, but they live somewhere in Canada. They don't live in the same spot as Sam. But Percy and her family come to Barry's Bay every single summer to enjoy their shore house, but to also spend time with Sam and his family. And so, like I said, Percy and Sam have been inseparable ever since they were 13. They pretty much do everything together. They're always hanging out. Whenever you see Sam, you see Percy, and vice versa. And because of how close they are and because of how strong their friendship is, they do start to develop romantic feelings for one another as time goes on. Unfortunately, there is an incident that happens that causes Sam and Percy to break up and essentially have a falling out where they don't speak to each other for 12 years. There is a tragedy that happens within Sam's family, and so Percy has to go back to Barry's Bay and be there for Sam, but also try to confront her past and also rekindle her friendship and this blossoming romance that she once had with Sam all those years ago. First things first, the atmosphere and the ambiance that Carly Fortune was able to include in this story. This book to me truly showcases how beautiful and magical the summertime is. And I know a lot of people hate summer, and I know a lot of people also say that people that do love summer are lying, because why would we possibly love the heat? Why would we possibly love being sticky and sweaty and hot? While all of those points are valid, I am a huge summer stan. Summer has always been my favorite season ever since I was a child, because for one, I was born in July. Shout out to Cancer Gang, period. So of course, I'm going to have some type of loyalty or allegiance to summer. Also, going back to my point as to why I love this book so much, the magic and light and airiness that you feel in the summertime is something that is unmatched and that you don't get with other seasons, in my opinion, okay? And I know the fall girlies are probably gonna want to tussle in the comments, and listen, fall is my second favorite season, okay? I love fall, but I just love summer. I've always been a summer girly, and I just think that Carly Fortune made this book for the girlies that love summertime, and I just really appreciate that. The atmosphere and the ambiance of the story really reminded me of an Emily Henry novel, because you guys know Emily Henry tends to write a lot of summer focused and summer themed romance books, which I love, and I just feel like Carly Fortune hit the nail on the head with that in this book. And it's funny because Emily Henry actually quoted this book on the front and says, "A radiant debut," and she was absolutely right. Going into that a little bit deeper, I just thought that Carly Fortune did an incredible job with the ambiance, the atmosphere, but also the nostalgia factor that comes along with summertime. And I'm not sure about y'all, my childhood summers were some of the best summers I've ever had in my life, and I would give almost anything to go back to that at least for one day, at least for one summer, I would love to be a kid again and just experience swimming and going to camp and just making new friends and making new memories and just lazing around and just having a good time and not having to worry about school or just anything else. I just feel like summer has always made me feel more alive. I don't know how to explain it. I thrive in the summertime. And it's funny because I felt like I was living vicariously through Sam and Percy, but I also felt like I was like reading about what I did in my childhood, because there were certain things that Sam and Percy got up to in the summer that I did with my friends, and it was just nice to take a trip down memory lane. I'm one of those people that loves nostalgia. Like, marketers who really bank on nostalgia being a selling point love me, because I'm one of those people that will buy something or will participate in something if it makes me think of a happier time. And so this book definitely did that for me, and I just really appreciate Carly Fortune for that alone. And then another thing that I really loved about this story, of course, was Sam and Percy's friendship, but also their romance. This book is told in dual timelines, so you really get to get invested in Sam and Percy's characters and their story and their journey, and it just makes it feel more worthwhile when you get to the end. And I just really loved reading about them growing up together and just having a great time together, and also understanding one another on a level that other characters weren't able to get to. You guys know, if you've been following my channel for a while, that I am not a friends to lovers girly at all. I've never really cared for the trope. I always thought it was boring, and I've always been an enemies to lovers girly, and I always will be. But I will say that Carly Fortune definitely made me like the friends to lovers trope a little bit more. So I will give her her 10s for that too, because that is not an easy feat, I feel like, for authors to be able to convert some of us into certain trope lovers. But Carly Fortune definitely made me like the trope a little bit more. It really did help me, like I said, invest in Sam and Percy's relationship and journey, and I was rooting for them every single step of the way. I couldn't wait for them to finally get things right and get their happily ever after, especially because they have known each other and have essentially been in love with each other since they were 13. I just think that is so beautiful, because not a lot of people can say that, and not a lot of people will experience that or have experienced finding their true love and their best friend at such a young age. I know that a lot of like high school sweetheart type of relationships get a bad rep. I understand that, but at the same time, I do think that it is beautiful, especially when it is genuine. And I just felt like with Percy and Sam, it was very genuine. And then finally, moving into my main critique and why I couldn't give this book a higher rating than what I did, is simply because of the miscommunication trope. I know that romance authors are always going to include the miscommunication trope in some way, shape, or form in their stories, especially because it does help move the plot along. And I understand why it's always going to be included in romance stories, but that doesn't mean that I have to like it or that I will like it, okay? I just probably will never like this trope, but I will say that I gave Sam and Percy's characters grace when I was reading through those chapters. They were kids throughout a lot of the story, or at least I felt like you were reading mostly from like the past timeline. So I gave them grace because, of course, when you're a kid or when you're a teenager, you do a lot of things that don't make sense. You do some things that are really out of character. So I was really trying to give them grace and understand that, like, hey, listen, this is what's going to happen when it comes to teenagers and children. Like, it is what it is. I went through it myself, and I'm sure you have too. But the issue that I had is when we finally got to their adult years and they were still acting like that, especially Percy. I was getting so frustrated with the way that Percy would just try to run away from her problems, or not really confront things head on, or not even try to tell Sam what's really going on in her head and why she's feeling so insecure or doubtful about certain things. And it was just really frustrating, because it's like, girl, you are in your 30s. Like, it's time to like get it together and really tell Sam how you're actually feeling. How else is he going to know to really make things right or get y'all relationship and friendship back on track if he doesn't really know what's going on with you? So that was something that really bothered me. But then taking a step back and like also getting older myself, I realized that there are a lot of human beings that are not good at communication. And I feel like these romance books do a great job at really painting that picture and showcasing that. And I think that's why a lot of us don't really care for this type of trope, because it feels like we're looking in a mirror, right? It feels like we're looking in a mirror, and it feels like someone's calling us out. And that makes a lot of sense as to why, like I said, I think a lot of us don't really care for this trope. But that's something that I have noticed as I've gotten older, is that people are just really shitty communicators. Like, there are a lot of people, whether it's friends, family, boyfriend, girlfriend, it doesn't matter. There are just some people that don't have great interpersonal skills, and it shows. And I just feel like these types of books really do a good job at showcasing that. Now, that doesn't mean that I'll instantly like the trope or that I will look for it in my romance books, but I do have a better understanding as to why it's included in a lot of romance books. And I'm gonna try my hardest to not get so so frustrated or annoyed when it is included in a story, because it's real life and it happens all the time. Other than that, I really did enjoy the story. I thought this was a great summer romance. And I know that summer is pretty much over now, but if you're still looking to squeeze in one last summer romance or one last summer / beach read, then I definitely think that you should look into this book. It was so cute, so sweet, and I can't wait to read Meet Me at the Lake next summer. And the last book that I read for the month of August that is sitting at a 4.5 star is She Started It by Sean Gilbert. So this is probably going to be my most controversial rating and book out of this entire video, because y'all, why did I eat this book up? I ate it up. Everybody on Goodreads is going back and forth about how they didn't care for it, or they thought it was stupid, or whatever the case was. And then there's me, who absolutely loved it, and I truly have no notes. Like, I don't. Sean Gilbert did her big one with this. And for this to be her debut, ate and left no crumbs. Like, I don't really know what to tell you. Y'all just gonna have to move around me if you don't agree, but I genuinely like this story. So I'm going to try my hardest to give you guys the best synopsis possible in my own words, because there are a lot of moving parts with this story. But this story follows a group of women who have known each other since elementary school, I'm pretty sure. And the names of these women are Tanya, Esther, Annabelle, and Chloe. Right, but there is an outlier and a crucial character to the story, and their name is Poppy. She does play an integral part of the story. These group of women have known each other ever since they were children. They have been inseparable and have been besties ever since. Of course, as time has gone on and they have become adults, they have gone down their own paths, and they don't talk or hang out as much as they once did, but they still consider each other great friends. So one day, all of the women receive a bachelorette party invitation in the mail from Poppy, and the women are very confused by this because they have not spoken to Poppy or really seen Poppy since they were all in middle / high school. And like I said, Poppy is an outlier, so she wasn't really a part of their group, and they bullied Poppy pretty severely. And so that's why they are confused as to why Poppy even invited them to her bachelorette party. But the women look at this as an opportunity to just go on a vacation and enjoy sun, sea, and sand. They don't really give a shit about Poppy's bachelorette party or her getting married. They accept Poppy's invite and they head to the island where they are going to have this bachelorette party. But once they get to this island, sinister things start happening and shit starts hitting the fan, and the story takes off from there. I thought that this story was a brilliant example of revenge best served cold. Truly, or I guess in this case, because they were on an island, hot. But this is one of the best revenge tales that I have read about in a long time. And again, for this to be a debut, Sean Gilbert really did a great job with, to me, executing this plot, especially because there was a lot going on. There were a lot of moving parts, a lot of different characters, and the chapters alternate between all of the women, and you don't really know who's an unreliable narrator, who is actually telling the truth. You just don't really know until you get closer to the end. Throughout the entire story, I was on the edge of my seat, I was hooked, and I couldn't put this book down. And I actually listened to this via audiobook, and that made the story, I think, even more enjoyable for me, because I'm not sure if it was one person doing different voices or if it was a group of voice actors, but regardless, this felt like a production. They really did a great job with differentiating each of the women, and you instantly knew whose chapter it was just by their voice and the way that they would react to certain situations happening or playing out in front of them. And I definitely think I'm going to start listening to a lot more thrillers via audiobook. I'm still gonna read my physical copies, okay, because I'm a physical copy gal, but I do love a good audiobook, and I love when authors and publishers really put that time and effort into crafting a great audiobook. Of course, I love the catty, bitchy drama that ensued throughout the entire story. These women were something else, and I told y'all, if you watched my Real Housewives book recommendations video, I will leave that linked up above just in case you missed it, that I had a feeling that She Started It was going to be a great book, and that it was going to do what it needs to do and really hit the nail on the head with the Real Housewives drama. And that's exactly what happened. It literally felt like a Real Housewives ultimate girls trip from hell. I couldn't get enough of it. Chef's kiss. 10 out of 10. I have no notes. I'm not going to get into who my favorite characters were. I feel like that could potentially be a spoiler. I felt like this book was a fascinating case study into how evil and cruel little girls and teenage girls can be. I like to think that I am a girl's girl, and I try my best to go out of my way to support women in any way that I can, but this story really did reiterate to me that there are some women out there that don't have that same mindset, and that they are just cruel, and they take pride in being cruel, and they take pride in being cruel to others. So because of that, I just felt extremely bad for Poppy, and my heart broke for her because she was severely bullied and tormented by this group of women, and you couldn't help but root for her and want her to get her lick back.
You gotta get your lick back. No, I said you gotta get your lick back. My opinion, get your lick back. Get your lick back.
Because the things that they did to that poor girl, it makes no sense to me. It truly makes no sense to me how you can be that mean and evil to someone that has done nothing to you, first of all. Now, I'm a very empathetic person. I'm always getting attached to characters and always feeling their emotions right alongside them. But I also feel like too, going through school in general, like you're going to encounter bullies, you're going to encounter people that are just mean and take pride in being a mean girl or a mean boy, and that's just what it is. But I feel like a lot of readers, myself included, will be able to really empathize and sympathize with Poppy and just everything that she endured at the hands of this group of women, because we either have been bullied or we know someone that has been bullied. Maybe not to the same extent as Poppy, but it has happened and it does happen. So I feel like whenever that is included in stories, there's an instant relatability and an instant connection that you might feel towards that character. I just thought that that part of the story, as sad and depressing and just infuriating as it was, I still thought that it really added a darker element and an edge to the story. I felt like it really made the whole revenge aspect even more worth it. I will say that I did see the plot twist coming. I definitely saw that coming from a mile away, because Sean Gilbert, the author, left a little red herring in one of the earlier chapters. I don't know how many people caught it, but I was one of the people that caught it. Me reading as many thrillers as I do, I'm always like searching for red herrings, and I'm always trying to solve the mystery or what's really going on in the story before I get to the end. I'm not saying that's the best way to read thrillers, and I'm not saying that I would recommend it. I'm just saying that that's something that I do and that I personally cannot shut off, because with the amount of thrillers that I read, it's become second nature to me. I still really enjoyed the story, and I still thought that it was a solid thriller, and I'm definitely going to keep Sean Gilbert on my radar because I want to see what she comes out with next. All right, y'all, and those are all of the books that I read for the month of August. Like I said, I'm hoping in September that I will have way more books to share in my September wrap up. At the end of the day, I am a mood reader through and through, so we'll see how this goes. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me and my channel out. And lastly, please make sure you follow me on Bookstagram as well as Storygraph. I will leave all of that information linked down below, as well as at the end of the video like I always do. I will see you guys in my next video.